Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a fantastic guest. This is the newest member of our local judiciary, the judge for the 7th Ward area, which includes Ponchatoula and Hammond, and is often called Hammond City Court because the court sits in Hammond. His name is Britain Sledge. He's one of the most successful lawyers in the area. He's been the Hammond City prosecutor, as well as an assistant district attorney and a private practitioner. And he's here to talk to us about his court, but also more importantly about himself. Your Honor, Judge Sledge, welcome to the show.
Still getting used to that, Parker, but thanks for having me.
Just ask your wife, the other Judge Sledge, and she can tell you, how to wear that hat. She's been at it a while. Why don't we start by you just telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks, Parker. Britain Sledge, born and raised right here on Range Road, just up from where your office is, where we're sitting now. Lived there basically my whole life. Fits kind of perfect with my current job. Was born in 7th Ward Hospital.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, for a guy who represents Hammond and Ponchatoula, you're right there on Range Road, kind of in between the two towns.
Yeah, I think I'll have to map it out. It's probably pretty much dead in the middle between Ponchatoula City Hall and Hammond City Hall.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can get
the only thing wrong I could say about your address is you're on the wrong side of the creek, but you can't help that. Like you say, you were raised there.
No, that's right. I'm on the right side of the interstate, wrong side.
Right. So, well, look, I know you grew up around here. You got, a well-known brother and well-known parent. Tell us about your family and what life was like as a child around here, growing up in that Range Road area.
I mean, it's a great spot. We've obviously grown a ton since I was a kid, especially this area. My parents are Britt and Dorothy Sledge. Both of my grandfathers were fairly well known, probably back in their time, and were both involved in politics. Actually, they both served on the Tangipahoa Parish School Board at the same time back in the 60s and 70s. My mom's father was J.D. Addison, longtime assessor.
The assessor, yeah, very well known.
And my dad's father was C.B. Sledge, that people more our parents' generation knew, Sledge Townsend. It's funny how many people I talked to whose first job was catching chicken back in the day for Sledge Townsend. It was a big chicken farm that has been going since before I was a kid, but that's
hard work. That means your family knew real work, and I only knew that from the kind of observational end of it. But when I was a kid, our dear friends, the Arteaga family, took over a local chicken farm, and we would spend the nights over there and the weekends or after ball games, my brothers and I. And those guys were hustling. I learned quick. Chicken farm was hard work I wanted no part of. That's why I'm a lawyer with soft hands now.
That's right. Look, I still do a little dabble in chicken farming, but it's I got about 6-8 chickens that I keep. That not quite the hard work, just keeps us in eggs. But
I've got the better deal than that is to have a brother who's got a half dozen chickens, which I do, and so I'm able to get my egg supply farm to table, but without the hassle.
That's right.
That's neat to hear. Now, I know you're an avid outdoorsman because my next door neighbor, Cullen Sellers, the well-known, wildlife agent and supervisor of wildlife and fisheries, goes gator hunting with you. So I assume that's something you grew up doing. Tell us about how you got into wildlife and hunting and fish. I mean, you spent today fishing, you got a good tan from it, but you're not sunburned. Tell us about your background in wildlife.
Hunted and fished my whole life. We live in a great spot for that. I try to get as much of our food as we can from nature. Do forage for mushrooms and other, wild edibles. Hunt and fish just about anything that I can. But it's something I grew up doing, something I've always loved to do, and something I love to share with my family now. I love to take my family hunting and fishing.
Well, I know growing up, I had the good fortune to be friends with Joseph Anderson and you were friends with his brother Webb. So we both spent a fair amount of time, playing, fishing, etc., down there at the Starvation Landing, camp down in Manchac. My family camp was right near there. A lot of people might be surprised to learn that Manchac area is in Hammond City Court, 7th Ward jurisdiction, right? So we've been talking about how you're now the new judge for Hammond, Ponchatoula, but am I right that Manchac's also included in your jurisdiction?
Yeah, it is north of the pass. All of that is part of the 7th Ward of Tangipahoa Parish. It goes over and picks up over to the west side of the Tangipahoa River too, where I know a lot of Ponchatoula families spend their summers.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, but so I mean that's exciting for me. I love that area, and like I said, me and you spent a bunch of good times down in the summer down there. Skiing, fishing, swimming, and being well behaved, obviously.
Obviously on our best behavior.
Right.
Nothing we would admit to anyway, now that we have kids and wives to answer to.
That's right. I'm glad I know Cullen Sellers as a friend and a family member and not on the wrong side of the law from.
Exactly. Cullen's a great one, man. That guy's out there hustling. Right now he's out in the heat painting his house on 8th Street. Nice. He's got one side of it done, the side that faces my house, and it looks impeccable. I tell him he can just, hang it up. I've got a good view now. Who cares about the rest of the neighborhood?
Yeah, but, as long as y'all are happy.
Yeah, no, that's a dude that's good as gold, and he married well. Everybody loves his wife, Michelle. Let's talk about what kind of your educational experience was coming up, because I know we're going to get to your role in the community and through the court, and ultimately that we can't help but talk about the impact on juveniles that your court has and that you will have as judge. And before we talk about how you are interacting with today's children, students, etc., I'd love to kind of hear about, your experience coming up. So if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about the schools you went to, maybe the teachers you had, and what you were into, whether it's sports or clubs or whatever.
Yeah, I started off at Woodland Park, again, just right up Range Road from where we are today. Ultimately, it closed at some point temporarily whenever they opened up the new Hammond East side. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I started going to Holy Ghost. Finished up at Holy Ghost and went to Hammond High. Had a great educational experience. I mean, we've got some great schools in the area. A great community that allows kids to grow up and have some good opportunities. Went to Hammond High, finished up Hammond High, went to LSU. Was good friends with your brother Louie at LSU, and then from LSU went to LSU Law School. Growing up, obviously played all the sports. My brother was probably a little better known for being the athlete. I got the good looks in the family. He got that.
Brady was a heck of a ball player, no doubt. Yeah,
he was, but still played. And so enjoyed that. And obviously today we've got some between Pard and Chapel Hill over there. We've got some first class facilities.
Yeah, you're right. I'm spending several nights a week out there at Pard these days. And, as soon as I finished up coaching my little bitty basketball team, I'm now out there with the T-ballers. I got 2 kids on the same team. And you're right. We're blessed with great facilities on both sides of the interstate now. Right. And frankly, those are resources we didn't have when we were kids. So while we always had wonderful volunteers and, some neat parks that were spread around town, there were too little. And now we've got these great world-class facilities. It's really been nice.
Yeah, I mean, look, youth athletics have changed since we were growing up, and we whether that's for the better or worse. But one thing you can't debate is the facilities that we have now far outclass. We grew up playing at.
Yeah. And both of those parks are very well run. As you do, I'm blessed to know the guys that run both parks as well as other employees that work there. And you have good people doing a great job, and it really makes a difference. And speaking of good men doing a great job, we have Tony Licciardi here chiming in with a comment. He is, of course, the administrator at your court that you will presumably inherit from Judge Gassaway, who was smart enough to scoop up Dr. Tony Licciardi. And Tony's comment here says, "Congratulations, Judge Sledge." Tony, thank you for tuning in. It's so good to hear from you. And I appreciate your support of the show over the years. You've been great. Why don't we use that as a segue to ask about the impact that Judge Grace Gassaway had on you? Because I know that you two worked together for many years. When she was the judge, you were the city prosecutor. You had the full unfettered support of her family, from her siblings to, daughter, the whole shebang. What did that mean to you to have the Gassaway clan come out in your favor? And what did, she do for you kind of as a mentor and an influence?
Well, I mean, her family support was, key. I would not have done this if they weren't 100% approving of me trying to follow her on the bench. She was just a good friend. I've known her my whole life. Like you probably saw her in the man shack a little bit growing up too. Just a good person. I think a lot of people maybe didn't understand what an asset she was to the community, especially in the juvenile portion of the 7th Ward Court. And I think that her intelligence was maybe underestimated too. She was brilliant, innovative.
Absolutely.
You got obviously Tony Licciardi just chiming in, but I mean, for her to hire somebody the caliber of Tony Licciardi, the staff that she's assembled overall through the years, just has established a first-rate court.
Yeah. From a guy who's been in courtrooms all over the state, from Shreveport to New Orleans and many places in between, they've got, an all-star squad over there between Tony and Guy and so many others. It's a real blessing and a testament to her eye for talent, because as you mentioned, she recruited people and not just folks that had been there forever. She would go out into the community to hire top-notch people. Including my wife. My wife Brandy worked for the judge when we met and when we got married. So
yeah, I mean, her bringing Guy in when she first took the bench. Guy was not an administrator of municipal bodies. I mean, he was coming from the special education
system. Yeah,
and her identifying him as somebody to come in and run the courthouse. He's done a tremendous job over the years. Just the most civically involved person I've ever been around.
For sure.
Somebody that cares and is always trying to do the right thing and help. He just set it up. And then, the entire staff she's assembled. I'm going to come in and do an audit of everything. But as far as the personnel, it'll be minor changes because she has just built such a fantastic court. And her
that's great to hear, because you're right. The team's unparalleled. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, and her being innovative and look, she allowed me as city prosecutor, using the technology that she implemented and had Tony develop. She allowed me to develop the systems to run it, because it's a prosecutor-driven file management system that we just have the most efficient court in the state of Louisiana. I mean, it's fantastic.
Well, let's talk about that, because I know that's something you want to continue to build on. And what I'm hearing there is it takes a team, but of course, in the court system, the judge, the prosecutor, the defense lawyers, we're not all on the same team, where it's adversarial by nature. But the judge found a way to not only ensure people were well represented in an adversarial capacity, but have the system itself work efficiently by bringing these stakeholders in and viewing it as teammates so that it runs well. How did y'all accomplish that, and how do you plan to continue that? To put together a system where a tech guy like Tony Licciardi can come up with software, but get a seasoned prosecutor like you to buy in to running it in a new way that's cutting edge, and have, excellent defense attorneys like Erica Williams, who was the PD there for so long, also work as part of that team. Tell us, what's the secret sauce and all of that you learned from Grace and you plan to carry on?
I don't know that I could identify it as far as one thing. I mean, just she cared. Was a good thing. She cared about running a great court. She cared about giving people their day in court and being fair, and having a system set up to to accommodate the parties in the court, and and take care of victims. Make sure that they are treated fairly as well. So I think she cared and cared about having a well-run court, and just had the personality where, and look, Erica Williams is a fantastic person, fantastic attorney.
Yeah.
Me and her butt heads just about daily as prosecutor and public defender, but just made sure that we knew that she cared, that our jobs were done properly, that we had the most resources to take care of our side of the equation as far as defense attorney versus prosecutor, and then just had the support to help everybody out as well. I'll always remember there's something that struck me about her probably the last 6 months that she was on the bench. We had just a frequent flyer that she had dealt with probably since he was a juvenile and in juvenile court, and then just almost weekly he was a shoplifter banned from every store in town, and so he really wasn't shoplifting anymore. He just would step foot in the parking lot, they'd call the police and arrest him. And just somebody that I never looked at seriously as a person. Anyway, he wound up he passed away, and I remember the first day we had court back after he passed away. It was well known throughout the courthouse because he was such a frequent flyer. Somebody made an almost flippant comment about him passing, and you could just see how sad she was to have something bad happen to this person that she had locked up
right
times.
Yeah.
That's something that I'll always carry with me, that we get jaded, we deal with these people over and over again, and they are a nuisance. Something has to be done with them, but just she still cared about him. And
the human element, it was so strong in her, and what a great mentor to have, what a great lesson and story to tell there. Folks, I think Judge Gassaway was our third ever interview on this show. Great interview. I think over 4,000 people watched that show.
Really?
So if you want to see a great woman in action, it's still here on Facebook. You can go, search for it and see her. She was just fantastic. So thanks for sharing her impact on you, Judge. I know that I agree with you. She was a great judge. She was a fair judge, and she cared. I didn't win every time I went in her court, but I never left feeling shortchanged. I knew that she researched everything. She thought about it hard. She weighed the evidence carefully and just did her level best to be fair and apply the law. And I know you'll do that too. You've had good training, good mentors there. And before we get into more of your career here on the bench, let's circle back. You mentioned going to school, okay? And I think you got us through LSU and LSU law. What was the next chapter after law school, professionally, personally? Where'd you go when you got out of school? Did you go straight to work at the DA's office, private practice? What'd you do?
Pretty shortly thereafter. My last year at LSU was the year that Katrina hit.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't have intentions of coming back to the 7th Ward, Ponchatoula Parish.
You might be like Jeff Leshershare, who was on our show before, same timeline, right? And he had this great job lined up in the city of New Orleans and thought he was going to be on Easy Street, and then that firm basically washed away with the storm, and he was out of work. So
I think Jeff was actually a year ahead of me at Loyola. Okay. But same time frame, same thing happened. Katrina hits the fall of my last year, and law firms in New Orleans aren't hiring. They're not there.
Right.
Law firms in Baton Rouge weren't hiring because they had all this cheap, experienced labor from New Orleans that had come up, and was working in Baton Rouge. So a lot of the big law firms that were generally hiring weren't hiring. And a lot of the smaller law firms that may hire also weren't hiring. So at that point, I was actually looking other avenues, things I could do with a law degree that may not necessarily be practicing law. And fortuitously had some family in the business that Scott Sledge, my cousin, was with the law firm Parker Layrisson Sledge, and they took me under their wing for a few months, and then a position opened up at the district attorney's office.
Okay.
And Scott Paraloo took a leap of faith and put some trust in me. So I left Paraloo and Sledge and went to the DA's office as a felony prosecutor. Maybe my first week on the job, me and another Ponchatoula native son, Brad Berner.
Oh yeah, great lawyer.
Tried a pretty high profile robbery and rape case that happened up there, and just kind of went from there. Served at the DA's office for 16 years. I cleaned out my desk last week, actually.
That had to be emotional, huh? I mean, you basically spent your whole career there so far.
It was. It was pretty bittersweet, and cleaned out my desk and went through kind of some of the letters and cards I've received over the years from victims and victims' families of high-profile cases that I've prosecuted. I was glad I didn't have to give my farewell speech after I finished that. I don't think I could have held it together. But so anyway, worked at the DA's office from basically right out of law school to just recently, and it was something I never had in mind. I did not go to law school to be a prosecutor, but it was as fulfilling of a career as I ever could have imagined. Got pushed outside my comfort zone trying some big cases, and something that I really got a lot of fulfillment out of doing. It can be thankless at times. It can be,
sure.
It's not anything you're going to get rich doing.
Yeah.
But you're really doing good work and work for the community and helping people out. The biggest thing.
Well, it's such important work because, great policing can only take you so far. You've got to then convict these perpetrators, and you need to do it with an even hand of justice, right? I mean, as you've got to analyze that file and make sure the police did their job properly and only bring charges you can prove. And it just requires a level of brains and, fairness and hard work at so many levels. And like you said, you're not going to get rich doing it. It's not always a high profile gig. And you get blamed for every loss and probably get too little credit when you win. And it has to be tough. Why don't you share with our viewers some of the lessons you might have learned along the way as an ADA? Because I would imagine you got a lot more trial experience than your average lawyer as a prosecutor. I would imagine you dealt with a ton more people from different walks, on both the perpetrator and victim side of things. And you just got a level of vision into our community that frankly very few people get. So during that time, 16 years of that, what did you learn that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, it's you really got to dig into the facts, the background of the players. It's when a file comes into me, it's in a paper folder. Sometimes it has pictures, sometimes it doesn't, and you really got to look at it from both sides because the police we're fortunate to have some well-run police agencies around here that do good work, but they're looking at it to solve the crime, make an arrest,
right.
Get to the bottom of it. You got to look at it beyond that. I think the biggest thing is when a file comes in, I'm looking at it basically from a defendant's point of view or a defense attorney's point of view, because that's who's going to be pouring through the file and beating me over the head with every deficiency or problem with the case. So it's reading between the lines and getting out and talking to people. That's something I always try to do, and something that Scott Perilou drilled into us, is reach out to the victims. Doing that on the front end, talking to people early and often, just letting them know who you are. It just helps work so much stuff out. Problems on the back end, and if they develop a level of trust in you early on, you can approach them with a problem that arises in the file later, and they'll believe you and they'll trust you when you say, look, this is what we need to do with this. And that's something, and social media has made it so hard, is that, at times we have to make hard decisions to plea bargain or amend a charge to something that a defendant will plead to, in order to get the case resolved and to avoid a possibly negative outcome of the case. And
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things the system does, and this is just a sheer numbers thing, is it forces functions like plea bargain. It seems to me like the media, people in political races have tried to make plea bargain a dirty word, And my experience as a prosecutor was limited at Ponchatoula City Court, and that's a night court. But just a couple nights ago, I was driving by there, and court's about to start, and this giant line of people who are facing charges is, winding out the front door well into the parking lot, and you can just eyeball it and know that physically there's no way we have the time for all those people to have a trial. We've got to plea bargain 90 something out of 100 in order to get justice done with the resources we have, from a personnel, time, courthouse space, everything. And that requires a lot of work on the prosecutor's side, reviewing those files ahead of time and dealing with witnesses, police, et cetera, to figure out the facts and which cases you can prove and which you can't, talking to defense lawyers ahead of time to try to figure out, whether you can work a deal or not. But I really hate to see how we live in this era of punditry that act like plea bargaining is horrible, never do it, when at the same time, if you really tried to apply that in real life, you couldn't close your courthouse down, right? I mean, the
biggest thing,
am I on the wrong path there?
No, absolutely. Look, you can never read the Facebook comments on an article on a case you handle, because half the people are incensed that the person got off light, and half the people are incensed that they didn't get hung. And
you could probably predict their opinion ahead of time by knowing whether they're related to the victim or the perpetrator, right?
I really made a point not to dig into it that deep. But that being said, something as trivial as courtroom space dictates so much of how many cases we can try.
Right.
We physically don't have enough courtroom space to try every single case that comes through. We have enough courtroom space to try 10% of the cases that come through. And it is what it is. Nobody's going to want to raise a tax to build 10 times the courtroom space that we have. That does dictate some of it, but a lot of it is just simply with talking with the victims or defense attorneys and realizing, look, here are the problems we have with this case. Do you want to roll the dice and get a home run and have this person convicted of a life sentence or 100 years or whatever, or do you want to take a lesser penalty but get a 100% chance that this person is going to have a penalty? And that's a lot of times really what it's about. And look, different DA's offices have different philosophies on that. We're blessed to have just a fantastic district attorney, Scott Perilou, that allows his assistants to work their cases, to do their jobs, and to make good decisions on the best way to resolve the cases. As long as we're working with our victims and the police agencies, he's going to let his assistants do their jobs, and he's hired some good ones. Yeah, and we've I think we've got a well-run DA's office.
Well, let's talk about that, and let's talk specifically about the district attorney And, you know, I know he was a mentor to you. You guys practiced together for 16 years. He's your boss at the DA's office. You work together in a private law firm. You know, tell us about Scott Perilou, what you learned from him, you know, lessons, leadership, etc. He's not the highest profile politician out there, you know, especially for a guy as powerful as he is. The position of DA, extremely powerful. But Scott seems to me to be pretty low key. He's not seeking out the camera or a bunch of acclaim. So while we got you in the hot seat, why don't you, you know, toot his horn a little bit, or you know, tell us about our DA, Scott Perilou.
Yeah, no, he's not going to seek out the camera, but he is going to keep the public and the citizens of his district informed. So he's not going to shy away from it either. I mean, he's right. I think he's accessible.
For sure.
Just like he, you know, encourages his assistants to communicate with our victims, he's going to return every phone call he gets.
Right. And I've never seen somebody in that position of power be more accessible in terms of meeting with you. If you need to meet with Scott Perilou, he will meet with you, you know, and you can't say that of everybody at that level.
No, I agree. I mean, he checks his own voicemails, returns his own emails. I mean, for a person with the large staff that he has and the very important job that he has, I think his whole career, definitely as long as I've been there, is fanatical about talking to people that are trying to get in touch with him.
Yeah, for sure.
He is also the best decision maker I've ever been around, and I don't know that there's a close second. I mean, he's an analytical thinker. Now, sometimes he solves a problem by just letting it work itself out. It's probably another good lesson to take away from him. But yeah, I mean, I've never seen somebody that can just analyze a situation and make the correct decision. And sometimes at the time I may not have agreed with it, but it's always been the right one. I mean, we are really fortunate to have him been in charge for as long as he has been. And he's, again, just hired some standout employees to work for him. And you see that by the people that have gone on to other positions.
Right. There's a not so small number of you that are now on the bench, right? I mean, you're not the first guy to come out of his DA's office and put on that black robe. So he must really be proud of you guys.
Yeah, he should be. I mean, he's definitely accumulated a very good staff. The attorney that he hired to replace me, I think, is just going to be a home run hire.
Who's that?
Alexis Taylor. She's from Independence. Got some experience at Orleans DA's office. Has been an attorney for I don't know exactly how long, but she's got a lot of experience. Knows the area, knows the people. And just him finding her and recruiting her to come work. Just going to be another home run hire. I think he's really got a great staff.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, look, speaking of well known and beloved local public servants, Randy Bush is on here commenting, our local school board member. Hey, Randy. Randy says, Parker calling you Judge Britain. Have you gotten used to that title yet? He says it sure sounds good.
I have not. Probably going to take a little while. And not going to push people to call me that either. It's going to take a little while, I think.
Well, you've earned it, man. Enjoy it. Miss Debbie Gildner is watching and comments there. Hey, Miss Debbie, I hope you're doing well. I love that picture you got there of Billy and Cody kissing you on the cheek. I hope those boys took care of you on Mother's Day. And we want to get Coach Gildner on the show here soon. So when he gets a break over the summer, maybe we'll get him in here. Speaking of folks on the show, one of our former guests, Mandy Braywick, says, congratulations, Britain. And she's kind enough to say there's two great men in this interview. Mandy, thank you for saying that. I'm certainly in good company. And another comment here from Mark Verbois. Mark says he's excited to see Britain in this new role. He says, Judge, that you've been a great asset to our community, and he's always been impressed with how you handle situation and you treat everyone with respect and sincerity. And Mark just thinks you're a great guy. Mark, I agree. wholeheartedly, and thank you for tuning in. Many of you know Mark is often our host of the show when I'm out. He does a great job. Unlike me, he's got professional broadcast experience, so he probably does a much better job. So, folks, if you're watching this show live, as you can see, we have the ability to share your comments here live on the air. So if you'd like to say hey to the judge or ask him a question or just give a shout out in any way, don't hesitate to comment, and I'll do my best to pull it up here. We're here with Judge Britain Sledge. We're talking about his court, his background. And one thing I have probably waited too long to ask him about is his beautiful bride. So speaking of getting used to the title of judge, we all know your wife, Erica, was elected as a district judge not that long ago. She's probably used to the title by now. She's had many long days wearing the robe. But let me go back in time, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your love story? I know you're proud of how well she runs her court. She's a great judge. She does a wonderful job. But I think people, you guys are now officially the legal power couple of our area, and there's no denying it. But I think people would love to know, how did you meet? How did this love story that ended up with 2 kids and 2 great careers, get started? What's the story there?
Well, we funny enough, we're the same age. Erica's from Kentwood. Obviously, I'm from down South Tangipahoa Parish, and probably we're in some of the same libraries in college, same coffee shops and libraries at the same time. Just it never happened to me until law school. We both were dating other people, and just over the years, I look, she's beautiful and fantastic, just a kind spirit and intelligent, wonderful person, and I'm sure she thought the same about me.
Well, we'll invite her on the show and give her an opportunity to dispute that or not. But for now, we'll just take that as evidence.
That's right. Yeah, she's not here to refute it. Anyway, we met in law school and got together, and just everything worked out. And same with her. She out of law school, she had the same Katrina situation I did, but she was at the time she was clerking for a firm that obviously saw how great of an attorney she was going to be, and was smart enough to snap her up and hire her. So she started her career in Baton Rouge, working for Guy Modica, and I came back over here.
Yeah, Guy was a really interesting, successful lawyer.
Yeah,
folks, all of you probably remember the great Warwick Dunn, from Catholic High to Florida State to the NFL, and all the single mamas around the world he's helped. He's built so many homes through his wonderful charity. But as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Judge, Guy was the Dunn family attorney. He represented Warwick Dunn and his siblings, and was a neat guy. I had the pleasure to have a case against them early in my career, and I learned a lot from Guy, as friendly rivals, if you will. He was a heck of a lawyer. I'm sure Erica learned a ton from him.
Great lawyer. She learned a lot from him, and some good stories that I think he learned not to do from his days representing the Teamsters Union.
Oh, wow.
But he's a great guy. I took Erica under his wing, and she did learn a lot. So worked for him
in law school. Eventually fell in love. And when did y'all get married? Did y'all take a long time to get to that, or?
Well, we asked her to marry me right here in Ponchatoula, just a couple of blocks from where we're sitting now.
Now, you see, if we would have just shared that, and you probably would have gotten elected in the first primary.
That's right.
Letting that be known.
Yeah, that's right. Then we got engaged here in Ponchatoula and got married. Just celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary. Got married in 2008. And
congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you. And she slowly worked her way back here. She worked in Baton Rouge for a little while for Guy Modica, and then worked in Denham Springs for a little while, kind of transitioned to doing mostly family law, and had a great career there. Did some some great work for a lot of families over there. And then an opportunity came up really when we were having our second child, and we're blessed to have it come along where she took a position as a hearing officer in the family court system of the 21st JDC. So she was able to, instead of having to commute to Denham Springs, Baton Rouge every day, she would go to the different courthouses, Livingston, and Amite, and St. Helena, and worked as a mediator doing family law cases. Got some great experience doing that, how to resolve conflicts, how to just handle people that were adversarial to each other, and did that for years. And then
and that was probably great experience to prepare her for the bench. You know, about maybe 3 months ago, we had the current hearing officer, Patricia Hicks, on the show.
Oh, yeah.
She did an interview and talked about the challenges of that job. And wow, when you think about it, family court, divorce, custody, all those intensely personal battles that happen there. And from what I understand, the hearing officer is at front lines to try to diffuse that situation, you know, get a good solid agreement that benefits everybody if you can. But like you said, mediate it. That had to be great experience for elevation to the bench, you know, at the full district court judge level, because that was just, you know, a ton of really mad people going at it, and she was really successful at getting resolutions.
Absolutely. I think, you know, it did a great job of teaching her, or allowing her to perfect treating people with dignity and respect when they're not at their best moment, probably going through some of the worst things that have ever happened to them.
Right.
You know, at least the biggest shakeup in their family life, and really being able to diffuse situations, allow people to see what the end result can be if your goal isn't to just cause harm. And so I think that, you know, it allowed her to really learn how to manage people and you know, get people to realize what the best result can be. You're never going to be 100% happy, but it'll allow you to get it wrapped up and move on with your life. And she's probably better to answer that than I am, but I do know from what I've seen and what I've heard that is gave her just a great amount of you know, experience on how to handle that. And another role of the hearing officer is they sit as magistrate or sit as judge on certain cases that can be reviewed by the actual judge. So she's wearing a robe as a hearing officer.
Yeah,
making rulings, protective orders.
Yeah, I guess it's a lot like a federal magistrate judge, you know, where you have a limited jurisdiction to rule. You know, you mentioned a great point about the day in court being somebody's perhaps worst day. And it's easy to envision in the context of, say, a custody battle where you risk losing your children, or, you know, divorce, or, you know, but really when you think about it, just about everybody in court is potentially facing their worst day, right? If you're charged with a crime and potentially going to jail, or, you know, in my practice, I'm an injury lawyer. I represent people who get in car wrecks. Nobody's there because of a good day. It's always a bad day. You know, there is no such thing as, say, a lottery win, you know, because you got in a car wreck. Is that something that you're going to bring as perspective to the bench, to kind of always realize these people in front of me, this is their life, maybe their worst day? I mean, what are your thoughts on that as you approach your judicial philosophy as you begin a career on the bench?
Yeah, well, I think I'm fortunate enough to have the experience as a prosecutor, having the trial experience, and to see the way that people react, and that know, and, you know, look in Hammond City Court and criminal matters, you know, we're not going to be sentencing adults to life in prison, but I've seen that even on the defense side, that, you know, no matter what you think about this person, what they've done, it's really a tragedy on both sides if it's serious enough that, you know, this is somebody that, as a defendant, that has a family, that cares about them, that wants to see good things still happen for them. And on the criminal, on the victim side, they've a lot of times experienced a traumatic event that they're still dealing with, and probably I've had some messages since the election from families of murder victims that I've had that I keep in touch with, that they're still dealing with that. So
yeah,
try to be empathetic. It goes back to what the story I told about Grace Gasaway. You got this person that passes away that I'll be honest, I lost sight of this as a human being with a family that is somebody that still has a lot to deal with, and Grace Gasaway still saw that. It wasn't a joke when this guy passed away, regardless of all the crazy things that he'd done. It was still just a tragedy. And so that's something that I want to try to maintain and do as a judge going forward, is just realize what these people are going through with empathy. A lot of what we're doing is evictions, and we're dealing with landlords that are stressed out, or maybe worried that they're not going to be able to make their mortgage payment, or but then on the flip side of that, you've got
somebody's losing their home. So
and that's it's sad for both sides of it.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
So try to keep that in mind on the civil, criminal side of it, and then obviously the juvenile court part of it, which is so much of what we do.
Yeah, talk about that, because I think a lot of us that don't have bird's eye view of the juvenile system don't really have a feel for what the court does. So if you don't mind, will you talk about the impact of Hammond City Court, in the juvenile system?
Yeah, we have jurisdiction of any juvenile crime that happens in the 7th Ward. So that can be murders, rapes, robberies.
Wow.
And it's something I've talked about a lot during the campaign. And we've got an epidemic right now of gun violence with juveniles.
Right.
And we can talk about the reasons for it. I mean, somebody can stomp their feet and say, well, it starts at home. And nobody's going to argue against that. Obviously, it does. It starts at home, and so the juvenile system, it's set up a little differently from the adult system, and it's something that honestly, Parker, is going to be what I'm going to have to. It's so much what we do, and I've done a lot of work in the juvenile system, but it's still been limited. So that's something that I'm going to have to wrap my head around, and luckily have some great resources there. Mike Forbes with the DA's office.
Yeah, fortunately, we have a really experienced prosecutor and a great defender in Destin Sims across the aisle.
And then Destin Sims, you don't get any better than her.
Yeah, she's great.
Somebody else that cares, is brilliant, and works hard, and I'm gonna rely on them a lot to help with the transition. So yeah, it's a big part of what we do, and it's a lot right now with all the juvenile gun crime that we have. I was talking to some other prosecutors recently, and it's like nobody fist fights anymore. Not that that's a good thing, but
right.
It's still just people. They're getting a fight over nothing, and literally nothing. Somebody says something negative about them and offends them, and they get a gun and go shoot up a place. Anyway,
you're right. Things have escalated in this day and age to a level, that's beyond anything we comprehended as kids. Yeah. But I want to share comments here with you that are coming in. There's so many folks saying nice things. Mr. Graylin Watts Sr.'s here, is basically talking about the youth here in a separate comment. And he says, do you take consideration that they're misled and need help reforming their life for a different perspective? And he also says here that he had the pleasure, Judge, to meet you, shake hands with you earlier this year. He says you've got an awesome personality, a genuine spirit, and he congratulates you on your election. So, Mr. Watts, thank you for chiming in with these comments. These are great points.
Yeah. He appreciates his kind words, but he does bring up a great point. Right now, the youth are absolutely being misled. What we've seen through the DA's office and the rise of gun violence and rise in gang crime, is honestly, Parker, what's been happening is when I first started out as a prosecutor, there were some neighborhoods that called themselves gangs.
Mm-hmm.
It was just neighborhoods, really, at the time, not organized. And look, they still fight. There's still drug crime.
Right.
There's no question about that. But it's changed, and I think a lot of it has to do with social media, into legitimate organized gang crime. And I think where the misdirection comes in is what we've seen is a lot of the gangs, at least the recruiting side of it, comes from enticing youth into believing that they are going to be made into successful rap artists.
Oh my gosh.
And so a lot of the higher ups in the gangs have studios, and they have active social media presence. And what they do is they'll go out to these kids and say, "Hey, come by, let's see you rap a little bit," and they do that, and then they mislead them into saying, "Look, here, go sell these drugs, go shoot up this house. We can get you more studio time. You're doing great. You're gonna be a great rapper." And
that's crazy.
You can imagine how the end result. They want to jail is what happens.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is adults, and they're really still kids. I mean, you're still talking, the oldest we're talking about is 21, maybe 24 years old. They're recruiting these young guys into believing that they're going to be rappers, they're going to be social media sensations. And, look, and social media feeds into it because some of these guys are getting real money from producing social media content, getting it out there, and then Facebook pays them to wave guns around, show drugs, and they don't do anything about it because their response is, "We don't know it's not a fake gun. We don't know that these aren't fake drugs." And so they don't.
Yeah, they got to get that under control. They can't turn a blind eye to that. That's
but it's terrible. A problem. And so what we're seeing is these adults, but still kids, but adult age defendants. What we're seeing is they'll have a 14 or 15-year-old in the car with them, and that 14 or 15-year-old, as part of the gang initiation or under their credit, they may say, "Look, the guns and the drugs," if they get pulled over, "the guns and the drugs are mine," to try to get the adult that could suffer real consequences off by claiming it. And then they're in the juvenile system, and they know they're not going to do 10 or 20 years in jail. They're going to be sent to the juvenile detention center, but not going to have the penalty that the adult is going to have. So they're absolutely being misled. Again, there is no one solution for it. It's going to take community involvement. It's going to take mentoring. It's going to take, again, the families and the churches being involved. But the juvenile system can be part of the solution,
right? And
steering it in the right direction by getting services in place for that family. Look, it begins at home. We need a good, stable environment. That is not always going to be there. That's just a sad fact that we have to deal with. Then what do we do with that juvenile? You can't just say, "Well, look, you need to have a better home life." It, just practically speaking, is not going to happen. So how do we improve it? How do we get structure in place? How do we get that person to stay out of the gang life? How to get away from the guns and the drugs? And we've got to have our Families in Need of Services program. FINS is a great resource that we have, that we've got to get involved with those students early on. The truancy program that Judge Gasaway pioneered has got to be part of that as well. It's got to be a good, vibrant truancy court to identify those problem kids early on. That's going to be the first flag that goes up, is that home isn't doing the most basic task of getting that student to class on a regular basis. So if that's the first problem, we can get some services in place, get FINS in place, and then as they get older, when the studies are clear, at some point they get in their teenage years, get in high school, there's got to be an adult figure in their life, a mentor, to help out with that. What we've seen with cooperating gang witnesses, they don't recruit kids that are actively involved in structured youth sports.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow. Okay.
It is. And the reason is because there's a third person mentor, adult that juvenile can talk to, that can step in and fix the problem. So if there's a coach in that kid's life, they're not getting recruited into the games the way that
they don't want to compete with that coach who's got that person's other ear, maybe.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's a great point. So if we can keep kids involved at Chapapila, at PARD, and then the other, church-oriented groups that have sports.
Yeah, I mean, sports aren't going to be for everybody, but maybe music is. Maybe there are other things that we can get in that kid's life. Just get an adult third party that youth can talk to. I mean, if the home life is breaking down, then we get a third party involved and to help out. But also to be another ear, another resource that kid can go to just keep them on the right path. I mean, we are not going to be able to save everybody. Wish we could, but if we can divert as many as we can from the criminal system, make them productive people, that's how the 7th Ward is going to be the most successful, vibrant, economically successful. It can be it's incremental improvements. It's going to
one kid at a time, one family at a time. That's how we're going to improve this area. So you're talking about great initiatives and great focus of, wonderful place to start in the home. And I know we only have a few more minutes here before we need to wrap up. I promised you I'd get you back to your 2 amazing kids and wife on time. But what are some other plans you have? Some other programs you might be implementing? I know you visited the legislature recently to meet with senators and others about improvements the court system could get through the law. What are your thoughts about the future of Hammond City Court?
Yeah, had a great visit. Went over to Baton Rouge on some other business on Monday, and then while I was there, stopped in and saw some of our local legislators. Had some good visits with them, and some of them from just across the state that met with Senator Stuart Cathy. He's actually from up around Monroe. He's introduced a bill that is going to make certain crimes, murders, rapes, robberies, for 17 and 18-year-olds, make those automatic adult felonies. Not saying I agree with it or disagree with it. I'm going to obviously follow whatever law that those guys hand down to me. But just interesting getting his perspective on why he thinks that's important. And then met with some of our local legislators over there, had good visits with them. I mean, look, everything's always going to be about funding, right? Especially for some of these youth programs. So I thought it was important to have a presence over there, just make sure they knew that I was there and was going to be a resource for them. And hopefully they'll be a resource for the court to get some funding over the years for some of these.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we can't take the funding for granted. My family learned that the hard way when Judge Gasaway's court lost some grant funding, and my wife's job was cut from full-time to part-time. She worked in the drug court program. So changes happen. And when that does happen, the community loses services. So I'm glad you mentioned that. We need to pay attention to make sure they're funding these programs that we need.
That's right. And the youth drug court is something that I'm still working on, but it does look like there's going to be some funding available to hopefully bring that back through our FINS program. So excited about that.
Great news.
Yeah. Working on code enforcement court. We actually
tell us about that. What is code enforcement court?
Yeah, so I mean, it's something that, as prosecutor, was something that we never really had any code violations that were written. It's for the important part of it, where it's going to be beneficial is on some of these derelict properties, absentee landowners that aren't cutting their grass, aren't have junk in their front yard or eyesores. Or
I love the sound of that. I used to be next to that.
Right.
It out, but you remember my old next door neighbors.
That's right. Funny we were talking about that.
Blighted properties are a problem. That's
great.
And
they're a magnet for criminal activity. It's you asked what I learned as a DA. I learned what a trap house is.
Well, teach me, because as a personal injury lawyer, I don't know what a trap house is, and I suspect some of our viewers may not.
Yeah, some of our wilier drug dealers or criminal members of society are smart enough not to sell drugs out of their house where they sleep at night, and they'll go to an abandoned house, or maybe to a rental property that somebody else ain't keeping a good eye on, and that's where they do their drug dealing. That's where so they do it somewhere other than their home. And so that's a lot of these abandoned properties or derelict properties. That's what we call a trap house. So it's going to be a good resource for trying to improve property values. I don't think it's going to be something that the good landlord, the good homeowner is going to have a lot of problems with, but it's going to be something that's going to help improve our property values. And
we don't have to worry about Ed Hoover doing that, having one of his properties, have that problem. But
probably not.
Other guys.
Probably not. But I mean, it's it's the problem properties that we're going to be able to get them into court.
Yeah.
Have a financial penalty. So we're going to have a code enforcement court docket that's going to be starting soon, and I think City of Hammond's working on it. They've got some code violations that have been written that we're going to be passing through the court, so that's going to be great. But I think we have jurisdiction also over the unincorporated areas of the 7th Ward. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a conversation to continue going forward. I know our local parish council, particularly parish council women from that I've talked to from Ponchatoula, Bridget Hyde, is
Kim Coach. Yeah, we got some wonderful councilwomen down here.
Yeah, they are both very passionate about keeping our waterways, our areas litter free.
They've been so great about picking up trash and fighting the litter problem. And speaking of Bridget, let's congratulate her on her recent Annie Award.
Yeah, that's
Bridget
fantastic.
Has been on the show. Yeah, if you're watching, congratulations. You're so well deserving.
She is, and just personal privilege on that. One of our city court staff, Faye Ogninsky, is also
Miss Faye, one of my favorite people. She's an avid watcher of the show. She often comments. Miss Faye's just beloved around here. That's great. Congratulations, Miss Faye.
She's great and well deserving as well. I hate to go down the list. I looked at it the other day, and all deserving recipients. I don't want to try to pick them all off the top.
Yeah, Jenny O'Neill, our neighbor here, about 2 blocks away from the office as we sit. Lots of great winners. Well, Judge, look, I promised you I'd get you out of here around 6, and the bell has rung. We are here at the end. Before I give you one more opportunity to share anything else you'd like with us, we did get a great comment in here from Doug Johnson, our mutual friend, my insurance agent, longtime family friend. He says, congratulations to you, Judge. He's very happy for you and for City Court. Wishes you and the court continued success, and mentions Grace, Guy. We all know what a dear friend he is to them and many others. Right, yeah. He just says he's very proud of you and actually us. And thank you, Doug, for your many kind words. Judge, before we go, is there anything else on your mind, on your heart, just anything at all that you'd like to share with our viewers before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for their support. I mean, you know me, Parker. I've always been kind of a laid-back guy. I like to hunt and fish and hang out. This campaign really pushed me to get out of my comfort zone, and it was great. Met some fantastic people. Made some really great friends. Had some great experiences. But just want to thank everybody for their support. But appreciate your support going forward. It's looking forward to the job you've elected me to do. I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to treat people fairly, and do everything I can to make our community a better place. I'm raising kids here just like you, Parker. I want to have grandkids here. I want my kids to be proud to stay here and call this area home and have some of the same experiences that I did. So I'm going to work hard to try to make it the best place that I can do my part to do that. And I appreciate everybody's support and look forward to seeing you and remaining active in the community in the future. And it's been a great experience. And thank everybody for your support.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, the numbers don't lie. You had a ton of support. You won quite easily. And quite frankly, Britain, you earned that. You've been serving our community for a very long time, honorably. Folks love your dad. They love your brother. They love your wife and kids and so on. But at the end of the day, I think people just recognize that you have had a lot of power for a long time as a DA and city prosecutor, and you wielded that sword fairly and honestly, and we can trust you to do the same with a gavel on the bench. So thanks for stepping up to run. It's so important that we have a great judge in that spot. Judge Gasaway, she manned that line for decades and did so well, and you were there supporting her. And it's great to see you leading that courthouse now, and I know you'll do well. So you have my pledge. If you ever need anything out of this little show, this little law firm, my little family, the city of Ponchatoula, we're here to help you any way we can. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in. It's been a real honor here to interview Judge Sledge for the first time, and we'll invite you back once you get a little seasoning on the bench. If you have any programs, events, you want to promote, just let us know. We'll be happy to have you back. So, folks, y'all have a great week.
Thanks for having me.